William Howard Taft was born on September 15, 1857, in Cincinnati, Ohio. He was one of 6 children of Louisa Maria Torre and Alfonso Taft. Many of his ancestors, including his father, had gone into law. Taft attended a private elementary school and, like his father, attended Yale College. There he joined the now notorious secret society Skull and Bones, which was co-founded by his father in 1832. Taft graduated from Yale in 1878. Departing from tradition, he went on to attend the University of Cincinnati College of Law. He was admitted to the Ohio State Bar Association in 1880. Coming from a politically prominent family, Taft rose quickly through the ranks as a young lawyer to a county prosecutor to a state judge. Then, at 32, in 1890, he was the youngest appointee as U.S. Solicitor General by President Benjamin Harrison. Then, President William McKinley appointed Taft Governor General of the Philippines. In Washington, D.C., by 1904, Taft became President Theodore Roosevelt's Secretary of War. 2 years later, Roosevelt offered him a choice to serve as either President or Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Taft wanted to assume the job of Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, but in a private meeting with Nellie and President Roosevelt, they swayed Taft to serve as president instead. Taft had an easy victory in the November 1908 election, sliding in on the popularity and endorsement of predecessor Theodore Roosevelt. He officially took office on March 4, 1909. President Taft left office on March 4, 1913. He became a law professor at Yale University. Then, in the summer of 1921, Taft finally achieved his long-desired position. He was appointed Chief Justice of the Supreme Court by President Warren G. Harding, becoming the only president to hold a seat on the Supreme Court. In 1921, Taft was appointed Chief Justice of the Supreme Court by President Warren G. Harding. The United States v. Moreland Supreme Court case involved a Fifth Amendment rights issue centering on whether or not hard labor was an infamous punishment or whether imprisonment in a penitentiary was a necessity for punishment to be considered infamous. Hill v. Wallace was a case overturning the legality of the Futures Trading Act of 1921. Wyoming v. Colorado dealt with the water distribution from the Laramie River. Taft was the first person to serve as President and Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. He was the first president to have a presidential automobile. Despite all his accomplishments, Taft was not well liked. He also implemented some unpopular policies, such as reducing tariffs on imports and his foreign policy known as dollar diplomacy. He also established a parcel post service that helped stimulate nationwide commerce and trade. William Howard Taft died on March 8, 1930, at his home in Washington, D.C. He was the first president to be buried in Arlington Cemetery, and the first to have a funeral broadcast on the radio.
The people that were involved were President Richard Nixon, Supreme Court of the United States. The majority was Burger, joined by Douglas, Brennan, Stewart, White, Marshall, Blacknum, and Powell. The case happened on July 24, 1974. It originated in the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit. Nixon's 7 closest aides were charged for the Watergate affair. The prosecutor ordered for audio tapes of Nixon's conversations that were said in the Oval Office. Nixon said that he was excused from the subpoena because of executive privilege. It was the right of collecting information for other government branches that protected the confidential discussions with the executive branch or national interest. The case went to the Supreme Court because Nixon did not want to give up the tapes that had been requested by subpoena. The decision was that the doctrine of separation of powers or the need for confidentiality of high-level communication could save the presidential privilege. The court said that the executive privilege was limited for the military or diplomatic affairs, but it gave options to the fundamental demands of due process of law in the fair administration of justice. Because of this, the president had to listen to the subpoena and release the tapes as well with the documents. After these were released, Nixon soon resigned. The impact that it had on American society was that the president ended up resigning after everything that had happened. The people went through a big change because the president that they were used to wasn't going to be there anymore. So now they have to get to know the new one and get used to him. Nothing changed over the time. The president still has to abide by these rules today. The president cannot resist from this ruling because in court they said that nothing can change it.